Well, that's a very original question. To understand how you make a Viking warrior relax, you need to understand something about the world of the Vikings. Let's begin by looking at the beginnings of this incredible people. The Vikings originally came from the frozen north of Europe, more or less what we call Scandinavia today. These lands are pretty nippy in winter, and temperatures there get down to 20 degrees below zero. Maybe that's the reason the Vikings boarded their long ships and headed off to invade other places whenever they could. Here they are, the Vikings. As you can see, they were in the habit of attacking every village they came across. They were a real menace to their neighbors. But so saying, let's try to get to know the Viking people from a little closer up.
Amazing history!
Well, perhaps not that close. The Vikings were great sailors, perhaps the greatest that ever sailed the seas. They reached places that were thousands of kilometers from where they set out. Their ships were called drakars, which means dragons, so they had dragons' heads carved on the prows of their vessels when they went into battle. The Vikings ventured as far as Italy and colonized Russia, which took its name from a Viking tribe from Norway called the Rus. They invaded England and crossed the Atlantic Ocean. In fact, it was the Vikings who first discovered America and named it Vinland, or Grapeland. But the natives attacked them with bows and arrows, which they didn't like, so after a few years they went home. Christopher Columbus took all the credit for the discovery, even though he got there 500 years later. No one told him the Vikings got there first. To make a Viking warrior relax, like the one you're looking at, you must understand that his life was governed by a set of warriors' rules. As soon as possible, they went into battle, even if that meant leaving a lot of their own men lying around dead and wounded. They weren't crazy, just very stubborn. The Vikings were convinced that dying in battle was the only way to get into Valhalla, their name for heaven, and the same rule applied to women. Women were highly respected. The Vikings had all kinds of strange beliefs. For example, they believed that clouds in the sky were the brains of a dead giant. Also, according to Vikings, the Great Flood was caused by the blood of a giant. All these extraordinary stories were told in long poems called sagas. These were the stories that the Vikings loved to tell each other as they drank their favorite drink, hydromel, made from honey fermented in water, drunk from the horns of animals called aurochs. By the way, for the Vikings, the first man was born thanks to the great god Odin. How? Odin spat into a divine spittoon, and the first man, Kvasir, was born from the spit. Now, that's enough of the sagas. Let's get back to the day-to-day life of day-to-day Vikings. What did they do when they weren't fighting battles? How did they die as warriors, and how did they settle their disputes? To find the answer to these basic questions...